We get told all the time that the core muscles are important in the golf swing and we should be training them. But what are the core muscles? What core muscles are actually used in the golf swing? And what are the best exercises for you as a golfer going to be to improve your core muscle strength? Welcome back to the Macro Golf YouTube channel. If you're new here, it means a lot to me if you hit the subscribe button, click the notification bell as well so you get notified of all the videos as they're released. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you for sticking with the channel. So today we're talking about the core muscles and the core muscles that are specifically used in the golf swing. We hear a lot about this. We hear about the core muscles. We should be training our core muscles. We should be using the core muscles more in the golf swing. But there's not really much clarity on what are the core muscles, what actually are the muscles that we should be training, and what are the best exercises for you as a golfer to do to actually start working on this stuff. So today we're going to clarify exactly what is meant by core muscles, exactly what are those muscles, and also we're going to show you some exercises that you can do either in the gym or at home to start working on improving the strength, activation, coordination, stability, and use of these core muscles in your golf swing. So the concept of the core or core muscles still doesn't really have a proper definition, but we can start to collect some groups of muscles and include them in this, and we can start to make this a little bit more specific for golf as well. So typically when someone mentions the core muscles, they're talking about the abdomen muscles, the muscles around the trunk area. It's going to include the muscles of the abs, the obliques, lower back, glutes, and all the muscles that kind of work in this middle trunk section. But when we see the diagram, there's so many muscles, so many small muscles, so many junctions of muscles working over the top of each other, depths, layers, confusion. So it's very hard to say what muscle or what group of muscles is actually working the most during the golf swing. But ultimately, we don't need to really care that much. We need to think more about what movement is being performed, what systems are then creating that movement, and then what exercises or routines can we do to help strengthen those systems in that movement. So the golf swing is a super complex movement, but essentially it is a rotational movement. So any muscles or core muscles or groups or systems of core muscles that help aiding rotation are going to be absolutely essential for you as a golfer. But we don't only have rotation of the torso, we also have rotation happening in the hips and all the way up the spine. So any core muscles that are involved in stabilization of the hip, lower back or spine are also going to be of huge importance. But not only do we have rotation in the golf swing, we also have flexion and extension, and we get flexion and extension at the hip and all the way through the spine as well. So muscles that are involved of the flexion, extension of the spine or flexion and extension of the hip also going to be really important for you as a golfer. And not only do we have rotation, flexion, extension, but we also have tilt and the ability for the spine to move and tilt side to side. So you see where I'm going with this? Any muscles that are going to be involved in the flexion, extension, rotation or tilt of the spine are going to be primarily important for you as a golfer. So this actually makes it really easy for us to answer the question of what core muscles are involved in the golf swing, and to answer it simply, all of them. So therefore, to be able to create an efficient, powerful, sequenced, stable golf swing, we need to have all of these core muscles activating. All of them need to be strong, they all need to be stable, and they all need to be working in synergy to create the correct rotation, extension, tilts, and all of these important movements in the golf swing. And this actually reminds me of a mistake that I see a lot of golfers make. When they start trying to add some work in the gym to improve their golf game, they work a lot on the rotation, but they forget the fact that we very rarely just rotate in the golf swing. We have rotation along with extension, along with tilt, and actually we need to teach our body how to work all of these systems in one way and sequence them all together and strengthen them all together as well. So if you want to strengthen your core muscles and you want to improve your ability to stabilize, strengthen, use these core muscles in the golf swing, here is what I recommend you do. The first thing I recommend you do is you start to activate all of these muscles. I then recommend you start to stabilize and strengthen all these muscles. And then finally, I recommend you starting to put these muscles into play with some power and strength exercises. But stick around, because towards the end of this video, we're actually going to go through full demonstrations for all of the exercises that tick all three of these boxes and show you exactly how to do these exercises in the most efficient way for you. So something I see really often in players that first come to me is a lack of activation of a lot of these core muscles. We spend a lot of time sat down, we spend a lot of time at our desk, we spend a lot of time in poor posture, and what happens is when we spend a lot of time in these static, poor positions, a lot of the muscles that are required and a lot of these core muscles deactivate, weaken, shorten, and just don't work very well. What this then means is we start to use the wrong muscles to create movement. Some areas become overused, Other important muscles do not get used. Not only is this inefficient and weak and less powerful, it also puts a risk of picking up injuries. So the first thing we need to do is reactivate, remobilize, re-stimulate all of these really important muscles in the core to start to get these things working back together, working as a system, and get the right muscles and right areas of the body producing the right movements. The next thing we need to do is we need to start to strengthen these core muscles. And this is the one that most people start with. They start to try and strengthen their abs. Maybe they try and strengthen their glutes. Maybe they try and strengthen their oblique muscles by working on some rotation work. But they kind of skip that first section of activation, and then either they get hurt or they just don't really get the result of the strength and power that they were looking for. So it is really important to strengthen both in rotation, flexion, extension, tilt, but it's also really important to strengthen with anti-rotation. And this leads really nicely on from the activation work that we do, because if we start to get these muscles activating better, they're going to work a lot better in terms of stabilization, anti-rotation, and then in terms of strength of rotation as well. Now, the reason our anti-rotation is so important is what happens in the goal swing is we get a separation of the lower body and the upper body. And when we create this separation, it provides a lot of opportunity for elastic power. But for one area to be able to pull on the other area and make use of that power, we need to have some anti-rotation strength that allows the other area to pull on the opposite area. So in the goal swing, what happens, the hips fire and the hips then get ahead of the torso, ahead of the hands, and ahead of the club. What we then need to happen is we need some anti-rotation stability across the middle part of our torso, which will allow the torso to pull on the hips and start to use the power that the hips have generated to start to pull the torso through. The arms and the hands will then start to pull on the torso, and then finally this will pull on the club and produce the club head speed. But if we don't have this anti-rotational strength, this sequence starts to break down, and sometimes we get the hips get too far ahead of the torso, or the hips and the torso never fully separate. Not only is this going to be a less efficient movement, less efficient pattern, but it also can lead to a lot of swing faults, a lot of timing issues, and a lot of consistency problems. So having a strong activated core that can work both in rotational power and anti-rotational power will finally allow you to get the most out of your swing speed that your body can produce. And once we've activated, once we've strengthened, once we've built our anti-rotation, once we've started to get this system strong and stable, now we can finally start to produce some true power and start to really kind of implement and apply the stability, strength, power, and activation that we've created. This is where exercises like lateral medicine ball throws, explosive rotational movements will really start to have a place. Because now we know we're activating the right muscles, we know we've strengthened, stabilized, and sequenced these muscles. Now we can start to really express our full power potential. What would happen if we skipped the first two steps and went straight to our power work? We probably aren't using the right muscles to create the rotation, but they're definitely not activated and stabilized, and we're just training in the poor sequencing and poor tendencies of creating our power and our rotation with the wrong areas. Not only will you be less efficient, you'll be less powerful, you won't swing it as hard, you won't swing it as fast, you definitely won't swing it as consistently, and chances are you're probably going to get hurt. So now we know what we need to do, we know the areas that are important, we know the movements that are important in the goal swing. Let's talk a little about some exercises we can do to activate, to strengthen, and to start working on some power. So typically with activation exercises, we work slower in a more controlled range of motion with a lot more conscious thought on the movement we're trying to produce and the muscle we're trying to use. We believe in this so much at Macro Golf that we actually added a Pilates section to the Macro Golf app, and Pilates is one of the best ways to actually start to activate these deep muscles that are required in the core. Work specifically on the glutes, obliques, abdomen muscles, and really start to get your brains as engaged with the muscles that we're trying to recruit. So Pilates exercises like the Pilates 100, the crisscross, the glute bridge or scoop, are really going to start to engage and activate all of these main key core muscles that we're going to need in the golf swing. So if you're completely new to core training, I really recommend you go and follow the Pilates videos in the Macro Golf app. I'll put a link in the bottom in the description. Or go away and work on these core foundational exercises of flexion, extension of the spine, slight rotation, and glute strengthening and activation. For strengthening exercises, we've got some slightly different options. We need to be working on rotational strength. That is a key fundamental of golf. So exercises like lateral band rotations, either working horizontally, from low to high or from high to low, chop variations, and anything that's getting the spine to rotate. It's gonna be a really good place to start on building some rotational strength. But we can also build some anti-rotational strength with exercises like the Pallof press or the landmine anti-rotation, all of which will start to teach these core muscles to fight against the resistance and create a braking mechanism. Again, if you want full exercise demonstrations of all of these videos, these can all be found in the Macro Golf app, and I'll put the link in the description below, where we go into full detail of exactly how to perform this exercise with the exact tips tips and tricks on how to get it right and make it most efficient. What we can also do is we can start to strengthen in our disassociation movement as well. So movements like a Pallof press with disassociation are going to really allow you to start to separate the hips from the torso, but start to work on the strength of the muscles that actually create this separation. And finally, we can get onto the power stuff, the application of this power, of this strength, and all the fun stuff that you probably see across social media. This is where we can start to include some throws, some rotational jumps, or some real explosive banded work. This is where we're really trying to apply the strength, the activation, everything we've built into some specific movement. And again, we've got tons of these within the Macro Golf app. Again, I'll put the description in the link below here, where again, we really teach you how to perform these exercises to their best quality. So now we know what exercises we can do to activate, what exercises we can do to strengthen, what exercises we can do to start to apply this and build the power. We just need to think a little bit about how we actually program these exercises within your current strength routine. Now, although core training is super important, it's not going to be the fundamental of everything. So keeping in our big lifts, like our bench press, squats, deadlifts, rows, it's actually going to get a lot of core stability and a lot of core activation done in those big lifts. So what we can then do is start to add these exercises in to our main strength program. And including one or two of these exercises at the end of your main strength training is going to be the best way for you to start to implement this. So if you're starting at the activation stage, this might be something that's done at the start of your session. But if you're into the strength and power stage, you can start to be added at the end of your strength training plan. Just be aware that your overall load of rotational work, if you are playing a lot and practicing a lot, just make sure you're managing this load to not create too much rotational load and volume throughout the week. So I hope you found this video useful. I hope you learned a little bit more about the core muscles that are involved in the golf swing. Hope you've also got some ideas on how you can start to build your journey from activation, strengthening and application. And also got some ideas of some actual exercises you can do to start working on your core stability and strength. If you found this video useful, it would mean a lot for me if you hit the like button and also share this video with a friend that needs to work on their core strengthening. Until then guys, I'll see you on the next video.